Hello, everyone. My name's Susanna. I'm a youth services librarian at the Jersey City Free Public Library. And today I'm going to present to you a very important person that we're going to be chatting with. It is author Saira Mir. It's Mir.
Mir.
Sorry, butchered that. Author Saira Mir.
Mhm.
And we're so excited to have you today, Saira. So
You.
thank you for being here. And we're going to be talking about your amazing book, Muslim Girls Rise, which is right behind you. And I also have a copy myself
Aw.
that we have available at the library. So please check it out. And so I'm actually so excited to have you here because number one, I just feel like this book says so much. It says so much for women. It says so much for Muslim women. And I just feel like I wish I had this book growing up. Um, and just having like a resource at hand, knowing how many strong Muslim women, notable Muslim women. Of course, there's so many strong Muslim women, but just, ones that are publicly recognized all in one place and getting a little biography of each one was just so amazing. So I want to commend you for that firstly.
Oh, so much. That means so much coming from you. I
Oh,
appreciate
thank you. It's really nothing. And we've actually been getting such amazing opinions about this book. I had it on display. And so many librarians were also like, oh my gosh, that's such a great book. I loved when it came out. So, yeah, a lot of people love this book. So we'll just get right into it. And so I just wanted to, before we get into the book, I kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit of background information about you, if that's okay. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that you do a lot of things. You're
Yeah.
super active. You're a physician. You advocate for women's health,
Mhm.
and you're also a parent, and you promote positive body image. And so feel free to just come in and talk.
Always the hardest question when someone says, "Tell me about you." You're like,
I know.
"Smart,"
Trust me, I know that question. Like, where do I begin? Right.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just me, regular old me. Yeah, so I'll just go by my titles first. So yeah, by background, professional training, I am an OBGYN. So women's health, women's issues, women's rights is very close to my heart, personally and professionally. Like you mentioned, I'm also a parent. My first child was a little girl, and she was inspiration for this book when she was about 4 years old. I really worried about her hearing things about Muslims and, being negatively impacted by some of the things that were floating around the 2016 election cycle. And so that really played a big role in me wanting this book to exist and being the one to make it happen. Um, in my community service role, I like to do a lot of reproductive health education. So I've done it for several years in area Islamic schools, and I'm actually doing one program for my local masjid coming up soon. So it's really important for me to normalize women's bodies, women's health, women's needs, that not just are concerns for women. It should be the community's concern, everyone's concern. Not something to be ashamed of or hidden or, private necessarily. It's sacred and it's something we protect, but it's not something to be ashamed of. So those are the big three umbrellas I consider myself. And then of course, as an author, which is my newest venture. The book came out in 2019. And so I've learned so much and met so many incredible people like yourself, and just have so much respect for the book community, like the love and sharing and connectedness of, words and pictures and how impactful that can be on everyone's life. So I'm very honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I know the book community is so great and so supportive. And I've also learned so much as well. And, we've actually connected through the community, through the book community, which is great. Um, and so it's fairly new, 2019. So you've been kind of like here for a minute, but not not totally seasoned, right?
Not seasoned at all. I did sign my second book contract, so I'm
Congratulations.
you.
Yes.
I'm hoping to eventually feel a little bit more accustomed to the book world, but I'm so grateful for every experience and every person I get to meet through.
Absolutely. So when will that one be coming out?
It's not announced yet, but hopefully
Oh, oh
2023.
my gosh, how exciting. Okay, well, congratulations. I'm so honored that you would share that right now. So,
Yeah, I'm really excited about the book. I mean, I talk a lot about this topic quite a bit, about, loss and how to cope through it. So that's really kind of what this book is about, a very personal experience. So
oh,
I
great.
am like waiting for it to be announced so I can just share it with the world, like every author is, but
Oh
I'm really,
no, I can only imagine. And we're going to have you back for that one as well.
oh, thank
So,
you.
okay. So, basically, how long did you have Muslim girls rise swimming around in your head, like the idea for it? And how did it come together? Could you just kind of tell us about that process? When did you actually, I know it was with the birth of your daughter, but
Yeah.
what, how long did you work on it for? And was it just, did it just start as just a few notes
Yeah.
written down? Did you know that you were going to write for children, or how did you come about?
I've always loved books. I've loved reading them. I loved, I've always loved art too. Fine arts is something that I really enjoyed. I haven't pursued it professionally, but keep telling myself it's on my to-do list, take an illustration class. Um, and so growing up, my sister and I, who is a prolific writer, and I keep telling her, you need to put your work into the world. And she hasn't taken that step yet, but she's amazingly gifted. We'd always said, okay, when we grow up, we're going to write a book together. I'm going to do the art. She's going to do the writing. And like I mentioned, I had my daughter, and just at night, I would tell her stories. I mentioned I was worrying about her self-image and her idea of hearing negative things about Muslims and feeling, ashamed and upset about what she was hearing. And so to counter that, I would tell her stories about my personal heroes. So like I would tell her about Malala Yousafzai or Miss Marvel, or people that were inspiring to me. And she was only 4 at the time. And she was like, that's really cool, Mama. Like, tell me more. I want to know more. And then I just all of a sudden I said, everyone needs to know these stories. They're out in the news cycles. You hear bits and pieces, but it needs to be pushed, widely to all children. And I immediately called my sister. I said, hey, we talked about that book years ago in college. Like, this is it. Let's do this. And she's like, I'm too busy. This is all you. I said, okay, so it's me. And I just started my research. Like, how do you put a book together? How do you write a nonfiction book? How do you cite your sources? Do you need to contact these people? And I made the personal choice to contact everyone in the book. And that was, something that meant a lot to me, that I would have people working with me and excited about this project as well. And, once I felt like I had a pretty good sample of work together, I started querying agents, and then I found an agent who fell in love with the work with me. So from the time the idea started to the time that I started querying was about 4 months of research and compiling. And the biographies are shorter, right? My interest at the time was to reach the youngest, most vulnerable population of young girls and boys too, because my research had shown that ideas of boys being smarter in math and science starts as young as kindergarten. So when they screened kindergartners, girls already felt inferior compared to boys in terms of their skills and abilities. So I really wanted to target a younger audience with these incredible stories. So these biographies were much shorter, I think, compared to some of the other anthologies that are out there.
I love that they were shorter because it provided such a large array of information. Sure, it might have been just a little bit for each of the, I think, 19 women,
Yeah.
but it was enough. It was enough to just, I could like just leave a reader awestruck. And that's what I loved about it, because it wasn't only 4, 5, or 6, it was 19,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
And I was actually hoping there'd be like a volume 2.
I think so too. I mean, I haven't got the idea. It's all about, getting the right people interested and involved. So we'll
Absolutely.
see.
Contacting a lot of people, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
It's,
imagine.
I mean, it's a lot of backleg work, and I just really wanted to keep the integrity of the book, and anyone who did not want to be a part of it, I respected their wishes for whatever reason, because I understand people want to protect their own, their name and their story, and it's theirs.
Absolutely.
And so I made sure that I did that, and I honored that. So I feel very, very connected to this book in a way that's like deeply personal, beyond just being heroes, but people who supported this work too. So that was really meaningful.
So within contacting these women, what was the reception? Were they just
Yeah.
like, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much," or was it a little bit more difficult with others, or
It
um,
varied. It really did vary. And I think
trying to
the
find a contact number
yeah,
must have been kind of hard?
I mean, it was surprisingly hard, and I'm much more social media savvy than I used to be. I was just very much old school email, Googling and emailing before. Um, the people that responded were very positive and
Okay,
very appreciative and excited and like, oh my gosh, I need this book for my kids, and I wish this was around when I was growing up. And I said, yes,
totally.
exactly why
Yeah.
we're doing this. Um, but I know some of the women that are very busy. At the time, Ilhan Omar was a
Oh
state
gosh.
representative, so
Yeah, I
she
can
was
imagine. Yeah.
and like, yeah, she had her aide saying, sure, go ahead. I approve the bio. Here's my quote. Do it. By the time the book came out, now she's a congresswoman and it was impossible to get a hold of her. I mean, I'm sure I could stop by her office if I, ventured out, but
Absolutely.
it's, the bandwidth that people have is totally understandable. I mean, when you're trying to save the world, the country, you don't have enough time to really focus on these things anymore. And I
Yeah.
totally respect that. So that was really, it depended on, how
Right.
busy women were. But the ones that were able to respond were so lovely. And it really just reinforced, why this book needs to exist. So
It's so funny. Like you reach her answering machine or her voicemail, like, "Hi, this is Ilhan. I'm saving the world right now, so leave a message."
exactly. I contacted her aide. I was like, hey, you remember me? Like, I actually don't work for her. She's in DC now. So good luck. Here you go. Here's a contact. And I emailed her general contact. I'm sure she gets hundreds of messages a day, right? From constituents and just
Absolutely.
and
Imagine that email inbox.
yeah, exactly. Someone just sitting there, an intern, like delete, delete, delete. Um, yeah, so it was a funny experience to kind of see as these women grow in their different roles as well,
Absolutely.
yeah. But it was a really awesome experience. Anytime I got an email from someone, I was just like fangirling and just had a wonderful time. Yeah.
So, from the 19, was it originally 19, or did you have a certain number of women and, did you have this in mind? Did you know it was going to be 19,
I
or
didn't know
did
it
you?
was gonna be 19.
Okay.
More of a whole numbers person, so it's funny
I
that
was
it
like, was it 20?
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, 20. The number did, I mean, the list did change here and there, as different things came about. And that's a challenge that, humans are not perfect, right? Some people make mistakes. And so, were some people on the list that kind of we thought it'd be better if we maybe considered them later based on some current things that are going on. And I think that's totally understandable. I also wanted to highlight the fact that no one's, they're not perfect. These are not people
Oh,
that are sitting on a pedestal and saying, this is your hero. These are just people who are
absolutely.
doing wonderful things in, a particular arena, and to glorify anyone or make someone, godlike is just the opposite of what a role model is supposed to be.
Right.
So it did fluctuate quite a bit. And there were some people I wanted on there and decided maybe for next volume, but yeah, 19 was it.
Okay. So these are some of my favorite quotes in the book. These are like some of my favorite things as going through the book. So I loved Linda Sarsour in there,
Yes.
just because she's Palestinian and I could just kind of like relate to her a little bit. And I'm so proud, by the way, of that. Hannah Tajima. I actually didn't know who that was. And
Yeah.
so her fashion background and just knowing her background, I mean, me just going through this, I've learned so much that
Mhm.
I didn't know. So
Yeah.
it's not just children that you're reaching so many more people. Librarians, educators, parents. I mean, I just love this book. It's wonderful. Um, and just knowing that they had such diverse backgrounds too. So Hannah had a mother who was a Japanese painter and a father who was a British artist.
Mhm, mhm.
And so just knowing their vast backgrounds was interesting to me as well. You had Olympic athletes in here, women working for NASA. I love that some of the women wore hijab, the covering of the hair, and some did not. A lot of people don't know that within the Muslim community, you know, Muslim women, some wear the hijab, some don't. It's not always, you know, one look, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not one homogeneous look. So I love that as well. It was very encompassing and reflective of the community. So I loved that. Oh, I love this one quote. So this is, of course, Malala. One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world.
Mhm.
Like, I thought that was beautiful. And then Noura Afia,
Mhm.
her quote was, just because you don't look like everyone else doesn't mean you're any less than everyone else. And
Mhm.
I love that so much. I just thought young ears hearing those words and having those words tickle their thoughts in their ears, and just to think about that and really reflect on that and open up discussion in the classroom, open up discussion between a mother and a child, or a father and a child, and a father and a daughter. I mean, it's just that, like, this book can do so much as far as discussion and learning and education, and I love that.
Well, thank you.
And so then we can move on and talk about your illustrator. How did you find Alia Jalil?
Alia Jalil, so gifted.
What is her background also?
She was a college student. She was an illustrator at the time.
Okay.
I know she's South Asian. I have not asked her like
Oh,
specifically
interesting. Okay.
country. Um, but she was only in college. I think she was a sophomore or a junior at the
Oh,
time. Illustration,
that's a
and
huge accomplishment at such a young
I
age. It's
know
amazing.
she has 3 picture books under her belt. I'm sure she's working on more. I know she just got married too. So she's really just, growing and becoming such an incredible artist. Um, so something I didn't know, because this was my first book, is that oftentimes publishers will find an artist or an illustrator through their art department or their art director, and you have no idea what your illustrations look like until the very end. So you're
Right.
hoping and you're praying that these things turn out the way that you envisioned. You usually share your vision, but it really is up. You want to try to give the illustrator as much bandwidth, as much leeway, so they can be the artists that they are, and express their imagery through your words. And so when I saw the final work, I was just relieved because it was exactly how I had hoped it would look. And it was more than perfect, right? Like the first opening page was more than I could ask for. Like, we talk about going back to the history of Muslim women, where it's not just, Muslim women are making changes now. This has always been from the beginning of time, where Muslim women have kind of claimed their place in their community and made changes. And she just, evoked such beautiful imagery in that opening page. So she just, blew it out of the park. She did so great.
So the editor, so do you feel that the editor was just spot on finding somebody that just had your vision?
Yeah, yes. So interestingly enough, when we had talked about how we envisioned this, the first visual that the editor had was very kind of like a mono print, like 2 or 3 colors of almost like a stamped look. And I said, "Oh, that's not what that's not what I envisioned. I was
Mm.
hoping more for like, emotions and a little whimsy and fantasy. And so when you read about these women, it's kind of larger than life. And I think Alia did that perfectly, where it's, them in their element, but it still has this kind of dreamlike quality to each picture.
Yeah, it really did. And it's like, it kind of reminded me of the I Am series,
Yeah.
or Who Is,
Yeah.
where it's nonfiction, but
Mhm.
it's fun
Yeah.
and it's whimsical and it has that like fun edge to it. And I think if you can manage, having that in your book, then it's going to work,
Yeah.
because it's appealing to the child or the reader in different ways. And so I feel like illustrations are a really big part of nonfiction. So,
Absolutely.
and getting them right. Yeah. So you did a good job. Those are amazing job with that.
She did a wonderful job, and her end pages are so beautiful with the
Right.
purple, yeah,
And the
filigree,
purple cover.
the purple
Love the
cover.
purple
I
cover.
know,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I didn't imagine purple book," but I love it. It's
It's
so
beautiful.
pretty.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about this idea of reclaiming the Muslim narrative? What are things that you had seen before in publishing, or in media, or in, Hollywood, as far as like the Muslim narrative? And,
Yeah.
and what do you mean by reclaiming the Muslim narrative?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, having a Muslim voice behind the Muslim narrative is so new, right? In the past, I
Mhm.
would say decade, that's really become more of a presence in books and media.
And for
Um,
so many other minorities as well and other people's, like, where have we been the past 100 years or so?
I
Just
know. I mean, really what it is, people holding open doors and allowing, other people in to tell these stories, to write these movies. And it didn't happen overnight, but now that I
right,
think slowly, people are trickling in, it's like, oh, these stories make more sense. This is more representative of our lives.
right,
And it all fits. More, I think the reception is better towards these books that are
right.
actually written by Muslim people. So as a parent of young children, when I was looking for books about Muslims, all I really found was Ramadan and Eid stories, which are amazing. We need those, but that's really the only thing I could find. And I said, there has
I
to be more.
agree with you there. We need everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be about our faith. Like this book is about women within the faith, but really we just need to see ourselves doing, taking the trash out, going on vacation, having
Humor. Let's add some humor
exactly.
in there. We're funny people too.
Exactly. So that's really what reclaiming the narrative is, telling your story as a Muslim person. What's meaningful to you is not meaningful to every Muslim person. But also we're, getting rid of the stereotypes that are so, like you said, not every Muslim woman wears a hijab. Not every Muslim woman is an Arab in the book. Like they're across, diaspora of races and backgrounds and, religiosity, if that's, want to use that word. But identify as Muslim. They all say, I am Muslim. And that's
Right,
what this is about, is saying, this is really what Islam is in terms
right.
of how it's practiced and, the reality in the world. So
Practiced all over the world, not on just one continent.
exactly.
There's a few billion of us, so.
Yeah, I know. And if you say, it's so funny because I was on Sunday, I've like taken place of Sunday school teacher for my kids. And I'm like, what does it take to be Muslim? And they're like, listing all these random things. Like, no, you just have to, the Shahada, you just have to say, I am Muslim and,
Right,
accept Islam. And that's all it takes. And
right,
I think that is kind of lost sometimes when we talk about what a Muslim is in the media and books.
right. I'm hoping to see more of that with the young filmmakers and other venues to promote movies through, Hulu and Netflix. I'm hoping to see more, um, you know, more Muslim characters, more Muslim narratives, and from different countries, different backgrounds. I hope there's more of a push for that, and seeing our own filmmakers and own directors come up with something amazing would be great too,
Absolutely.
which can appeal to everyone, not just to the Western, reader or, viewer. So yeah, so maybe we'll see more. It's nice to be on the cusp of that as
It
well.
really is. Yeah, I think we're
Yeah,
seeing a change in front of our own eyes, and it's exciting.
yeah, I agree with you there. Um, okay, so let's see what else I have here. So, what do you personally want to see more of in terms of Muslim characters? You just personally, it could be like,
Uh, I really want to see. I think I'm channeling my middle grade self, where I grew up in a small town. I was the only Muslim person in my school, an hour radius. Yeah, and just having those awkward youth moments addressed. Like feeling hairy. That was actually a picture book that came out 2 days ago. Lakshmi's Much. One of my friends, Shelly and Anand, wrote it, and it's like perfect. It's like body hair. We need that positivity.
I laughed so hard when I read that. Yeah.
It's so great. I mean, but even like the awkwardness of feeling like, oh, I can't go to the school dance, or I'm not dating. Dating's not allowed. Watching everyone else like, do all these all-American things, and I'm just kind of the nerd, not doing these cool, fun things. I would really love to see that, channeled into a cool heroine who, overcomes that feeling of being an outsider. Because I know there's still lots of Muslim kids in the country, across the country, that, still are, feeling kind of lonely. And so
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
my
teenagers are just hilarious in general, specifically Muslim teenagers. I mean, I remember being part of the Muslim youth group in my mosque back in
yeah,
the day. And it would be all of us girls saying like, well, what do you do when you get invited to parties? And then
yeah,
one girl was like, well, I just tell like my friends and other people that I only go to college parties. I don't go to high school.
wow,
We were so ridiculous. Like,
that's
it's just so
sage
funny.
advice.
One day I have to put that in a book because that's just hilarious.
It's so funny. Yeah, we had conversations like that. I would go an hour to the local mosque to meet up with other people that I feel like I could, understood me more.
Right.
And yeah, we had our own get-togethers, our own parties
And then
to
also another thing was like having parents that wanted to do like not just excel, but like go the like explaining to friends like, oh no, I can't just be, um, a doctor. I have to be the best doctor.
yeah.
I
Oh,
can't just be a writer.
That's such a, I don't know if I'd pick that book up. If we talked about that, it'd be too triggering. um, but yeah, totally. Yeah, that
Yeah.
minority perfection complex, definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, somebody definitely needs to write growing up, Muslim, like top, 300 things that we all did,
Oh yeah,
as a teen. It would be so funny.
totally, totally.
So I just also want to ask you, who are your favorite authors now? They don't have to be, it could be anybody or books that you're reading right now.
Yeah. So favorite authors is hard. I mean, there's so many books I'm reading right now. So I'm actually this is the one time in my life, this pandemic, that I've done multiple books at one time. I don't recommend it, but it's kind of happened that way because I feel
Right.
like I
It
read
happens.
in starts, right? I don't have the luxury of like dedicating an hour. So The Night Diary by Via Hirandanandi. It is kind
I'm
of
gonna
the
write
version of a young girl who's going through the India-Pakistan partition. And so it's a diary of her. It's beautiful. I'm halfway through. I'm reading it with my daughter who's 8 now. It's very touching, very relatable, and it's a good family read too. So we read
Oh,
it at night. The other book I'm reading is Once Upon an Eve. You're probably familiar with this. I gifted this to everyone last year. So it's an
I
anthology.
have that in my home and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, again, it's beautiful because it's an anthology, short stories where you can kind of read, as you go along. And I've really enjoyed it so far. I'm working through Barack Obama's A Promised Land. It's so long,
Mhm.
it's taking me time to get through it. But every chapter, I'm like, oh, okay, this would have helped to know this like 10 years ago when the world was falling apart.
That's sitting on my nightstand too.
And then I'm also reading Homeland Elegies by Ayad Akhtar. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not. I took the cover off, but it's
I'm
kind of
writing it down.
yeah, Homeland Elegies. It came out back in September of last year, and it really talks about it's a fictional memoir, but it's based on his real life
Nice.
about growing up Muslim in America and kind of during the Trump era and how that implicated his or impacted his family dynamics. It's interesting because he wrote about, it's a passage in here based on my family, which I was not expecting, but I was reading it and I was like, that's my family. And
Oh, now I have to read it.
yeah, we'll talk more
You've
about that.
intrigued me. Yes.
It's really well done. Obviously, a lot of it is fictionalized and sensationalized for the purpose of the story, but it really hits on a lot of notes of the struggles of balancing being American and Muslim and how that really can be tumultuous during the war on terror and when Trump took office, all these big things that impact Muslims. So
Yeah. I mean, I basically got my book deal with the whole Muslim ban.
oh,
So,
really?
yes, I did. Yeah.
Wow.
I think there was Publishers Weekly put out a call for submissions, open call for submissions. A bunch of agents got together, and an agent named Clelia, who's actually part of my my agency group, started it. And so I read the open call in print and Publishers Weekly, and I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
this they're actually asking for Muslim authors, and I had to read it twice,
Yeah.
and I was so excited. But yeah, a lot came out of that whole entire administration. So
Yeah. A lot. I mean, that was the reason I thought of this book is because there were so many like Muslims hate us or Islam
right,
hates us, like
right. It was like
that was playing on
it
TV
was
or
like
Iran.
what can we do type of feeling. Like you just felt so like almost crippled in a way,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and stuck. And it was just like I like the feeling of having to do something for our community. It was
Mhm.
like that drive. So I feel yeah.
Absolutely. Art is born out of, pain and suffering at times. And
Absolutely. I've heard that so many times within the Trump administration. Like heard that everywhere.
really,
Um, So what type of books do you lean more towards, would you say?
Yeah. So what I read and what I write is usually totally different. So I love to read fantasy. I love to escape, go somewhere far. So Neil Gaiman is actually one of my go-tos when I need like comfort, just, another
Yeah,
world, another place. But when I write, I always go back to kind of nonfiction topics and not always nonfiction writing, but like I want to write about like body positivity and I want to write
right.
about, you know,
You do
body.
it very well. You
Oh,
do
thank
it
you
very
so
well. Not everyone can write nonfiction for children. I mean, you do it extremely well. So,
much. Thank you so much. I
so
really think
who
about like
doesn't?
really bedtime stories. Like what do I want to read to my kid that I know she'll pay attention, that she'll be interested in, and it's not so long that I'm like exhausted by the end of it either, So
Right.
that's a balance I really try to strike with my work, and I hope that the next book that is announced kind of achieves that as well. It's a really heavy topic, but it's only about 300 words, so it's really um, not difficult to get through in terms of reading, but it carries a lot of weight to the message.
Yeah, definitely. And touching on body positivity and from an early age is critical. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
tell people when they ask about like, how do I talk to my kid about puberty or like menstruation? I tell them it's not a one conversation, it's a lifetime of planting the seeds
Mm.
early on where they're comfortable talking about these things with you, where they're
And
comfortable using.
being careful of what your daughters and sons hear you say about yourself.
You have to
That's where,
model how
yeah,
you want them to feel. And that's something I grew up with a very loving mother, but lots of baggage from back home about what body should look like and how body should be treated and the image of beauty. And I tried to just expunge that vocabulary from my usage. And we don't talk about how bodies appear. We talk about hygiene. We talk about self-care. Um,
eating healthy, making right
exactly.
choices.
Eating
Yeah.
healthy, healthy exercise, making your heart healthy. We talk about a lot of disease processes. My kids are probably like, "Oh, you're so boring, mom." But preventing illnesses that will cause damage to us. But it's never about appearances.
Right. Well,
And
I totally am looking forward to that, to your next project. I think it's something definitely to look forward to. And I just have a couple more questions for you. Um, so for any of the aspiring writers out there, could you give some advice about the industry or the craft or something that you've learned from your process?
yeah, I've learned, so the biggest thing I've learned is it just takes time. Everything takes time, from your ideas to really letting them bloom to become the full potential that they are. Takes revisions, takes thought, takes reflection. Craft wise, reading a ton of picture books, especially books along the lines of the stories you're trying to tell, is really important. So you can look at what's successful, what resonates with you, what resonates with readers. So we go to the library regularly. I just did a big book haul today from the library. I have my picture books, and my daughter has
You're
them
one of those.
middle grades, and my son has a mix of like early readers and like way too old, but he wants to get them and I don't tell him no. um, so we just all have our stack of books and come home and I just go through them and say, I love this book, why do I love it? And then kind of looking at those aspects of the book and what really works.
Yeah.
And that's the very first step of really being able to try to tell the story you want to tell. And
So when you say looking at the book and different aspects of it, what do you mean?
I
Not
look at,
just
yeah, go ahead, Susanna, what were you
Oh,
going
no,
to
no,
say?
no, not just like, the actual story, but looking at, you know, um, word count and
Yeah. I look at kind of like, how does it open? What's the opening line?
right.
How do they draw you in? Where in the story are they opening this story? Why is that meaningful to you versus are you bored after the first page? Um, and also what is the pace? How quickly are they introducing new characters? When
Mm.
does the conflict start? All these things have to happen really early with picture books because you're limited in how many pages and words you have. But it's nice to kind of see that not everyone follows the same format. Every story has a
Right,
different tempo, different,
right.
issues potentially. But it's helpful to kind of see that and see patterns and understand what story am I trying to tell? Is this a conflict story? Is it a slice of life? Is it again, nonfiction? How do you introduce these topics where it's interesting to kids? All of these things kind of, culminate based on, the story you're trying to tell.
Right. And I think a lot of people don't understand that it's extremely difficult to write for children.
Yes, yes.
Um,
Exactly.
because there is a lot of rules and there's a lot of work that goes into it and there's a lot of editing and being able to tell the story in as few words as possible
Absolutely.
is quite challenging. So a lot of people don't understand what this industry actually entails. So it
Mhm.
is good to, like you said, read, and do your research, and then read more comp titles, read everything out there. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um,
I will add too, with picture books in
yeah.
particular, something that I was aware of but didn't cognitively like acknowledge, that you don't tell your pictures through your words. Like anything that can be told through your imagery, you should not have words repeating it. And so that's such a balance of telling a story and having details in the illustrations where you're not also pushing the illustrator's hand. So it's such a delicate balance of like kind of, it's a song almost where someone visualizes what you're kind of singing without you
But once you exactly. But once you get it, you get it.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
once you actually like switch your brain over to
Mhm.
say, okay, well, am I telling what the picture is already
Yes,
showing?
yes,
You kind of get it
yeah,
before you write it down. So it's
exactly.
just, I think, practice and just kind of understanding what needs to be put in words and what can be an illustrator's note is
Mhm.
also big. And then, it took me a while actually to learn that.
Totally, totally, yeah.
So going back to Muslim Girls Rise, I just want to ask you one final thing.
Yeah.
Can you see it? Okay. What would you like readers or people, what
Mhm.
would you like them to walk away with
I
after
want them to walk away with knowing that this book is for everybody. It's was written for my little Muslim girl, but it's for boys and girls and women and men and everyone else, however they identify, that they can see inspirational people, beating the odds and really doing what they love and making a change around them. And you don't have to do something big to be impactful, it just has to be meaningful to you. And so that's really what I try to tell people.
Okay, well, thank you so much,
Thank
Saira. It was
you.
a pleasure talking to you today. I hope we could do it again in the future. Maybe we could come up with another program idea. Who knows? We have Ramadan coming up. We have Eid coming up, two Eids more specifically. And
Yeah.
maybe one day we could actually get you in person, moving ahead into the
Yeah.
future. That would be nice to be able to reopen libraries and to be doing in-person events would be
Mhm.
wonderful. You have to come visit our library and our community.
I
It is
can't
just
wait.
like this fun urban historical district at our
Oh,
main location with like just cute coffee shops and all sorts of things. So you have to definitely come visit one day. You never know, right?
I can't wait. I'm adding it to my list of stuff to do when the pandemic's over. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. I enjoyed it.
And we'll be sure to promote your book and maybe create some programs around it in the future. So
Thank you. Thank you
thank
so much.
you.
All right.